Ladies and gentlemen, it's time. The National Weather Association WeatherReady Fest 2020. We're virtual this year. This is James Spann. I'm the chief meteorologist for WBMA, ABC 3340 television in Birmingham. And today on this session, we're going to talk a little bit about tornadoes, what they are, how they form, what do they do, how do you prepare? A lot of things to talk about. The first question is, where do these things happen in the United States? Well, you can see that the western U.S., they don't happen a lot. If you're west of the Rockies, they can happen there, but not a lot. The core areas are parts of the Great Plains, traditional Tornado Alley, and parts of the Deep South, often called Dixie Alley. In fact, there's been some research lately. There's an interesting paper that came out a couple of years ago from Victor Gensini and Harold Brooks suggesting that we're beginning to see an increase in frequency in tornado activity in the southern United States as opposed to the Great Plains. But understand, both of these areas have a lot of tornadoes, and you have to be ready for them. And of course, for a tornado to form, you have to have a thunderstorm. Without a thunderstorm, no tornadoes. And the conditions have to be just right. Most storms don't produce tornadoes, and most storms aren't even severe. But tornadoes do form from severe storms. And by definition, a severe storm has 58 mile per hour winds or greater, or hail 1 inch in diameter or larger. And we often teach, if you start to see large hail like that softball-sized hail, that storm could be fairly dangerous. That means the updraft is very strong, and generally speaking, the stronger the updraft, the more dangerous the storm. But sometimes on the right rear flank of a storm, under the storm updraft, you'll have a cloud lowering like this. This is called a wall cloud. And sometimes beneath the wall cloud, you'll wind up with a tornado. How do these things form? Well, there's a lot of things we know, there's a lot of things we don't know, but this short video explains the basic process.
What causes a tornado? The swirling, funnel-shaped winds of a tornado are easily recognizable, and they can be very dangerous. But what causes these unique and violent weather phenomena? Tornadoes usually begin with a thunderstorm, but not just any thunderstorm, a specific kind of rotating thunderstorm called a supercell. They can bring damaging hail, strong winds, lightning, and flash floods. Supercells form when air becomes very unstable and wind speed and direction are different at different altitudes. This condition is called wind shear. Wind shear is common in the formation of most thunderstorms. When wind at ground level is blowing in one direction and wind higher up in the atmosphere blows in a different direction, it can cause a horizontal tube of air to form. In a thunderstorm, warm air rises up within the storm. This is called an updraft. An updraft can turn a horizontal rotating tube of air into a vertical one. When this happens, the whole storm begins rotating, creating a supercell. Some supercells form a funnel cloud. And if that funnel cloud extends to the ground, it's called a tornado. Tornadoes can produce winds up to 300 miles per hour at the surface, making them dangerous to people and property. As a tornado moves along the ground, its strong winds begin to pick up debris too. In fact, flying debris is usually what causes the most damage in a storm. Thankfully, meteorologists are keeping an eye on your local weather. They will try to give you a heads up if a tornado is likely to form in your area. They combine wind and temperature readings from the ground with information from satellites to determine if your local weather has the right conditions for a tornado. For example, NOAA's Goes East satellite captured this video of an isolated supercell storm in Texas. The different colors represent different cloud top temperatures in the storm. Colder temperatures represent higher cloud tops, which often means stronger storms. So, if you see a tornado watch or warning in your area, look for updates and get to safety as soon as possible. And know that NOAA's GOES-R series satellites will still be keeping a close eye on things from orbit. Find out more about extreme weather at NOAA SciJinx.
And you do know the difference between a watch and a warning, I hope. A tornado watch means conditions are favorable for tornadoes. A tornado warning means that we actually see one with a spotter or we have one indicated on radar, and that's when you go into action. And let me say one thing about tornadoes. There's one good thing about them. One good thing. Generally speaking, they're not good. But here's the good thing about tornadoes is the fact that they simply don't happen a lot. You might live to be as old as me, even if you're in a tornado-prone area, and you'll never see one your whole life long. But it's very important to understand them and know what to do. And that's some of the things we'll be talking about today. And not all tornadoes are the same. Every tornado gets a number based on the damage it causes. This scale is called the EF scale. That stands for Enhanced Fujita. Dr. Theodore Fujita was a famous tornado researcher with the University of Chicago for years and years, and he came up with an original scale of tornado damage called the F scale. It was modified a while back, and now it's the EF scale. But the bottom line is the weakest tornado is an EF 0, the strongest, an EF 5. The good news, most tornadoes are EF 0s and EF 1s, but understand even those smaller tornadoes are dangerous and life-threatening. But the ones that kill most of the people, that do most of the incredibly severe damage, are the upper-end tornadoes, EF 3s, 4s, and 5s. I want to go back to a day 9.5 years ago. This was what we call a generational tornado outbreak on April 27, 2011. This affected many states in the southeast, including my state of Alabama. And this is a map of all of the tornadoes that touched down on that day. In my one state, we had 62 tornadoes on this day. Now, we've had days like this in the past. For example, April 3rd, 1974. In my state, we had a day like this on March 21st, 1932. They tend to happen about every 40 years. But when they do happen, they're pretty remarkable. And again, you can see the scale, the EF scale on the left, and we actually had on this day three EF 5s in one day. You might go 25 years without having one in your state, but on this day we had 3 and multiple EF 4 tornadoes. Let me show you one of our EF 5s on this day. This was a violent wedge tornado that touched down in the northwestern part of the state and came across the community of Hackleburg in Marion County and then crossed into Franklin County into the town of Phil Campbell. And as you might expect, the damage was simply catastrophic. But as bad as this looks, a tornado like that is survivable if you know the tornado's coming, know what to do, and take the right action. For days like this, often these big tornadoes, you'll get lead times of 20, 30, 35 minutes in advance. That's a lot of time to go to a safe place. And in a situation like this, as bad as it looks, understand that most people down there survived. And remember, this is an EF 5. Hardly any tornadoes are this strong. Most tornadoes are EF 0s and EF 1s. This is one of the EF 4s on this day. This is the tornado that came through Tuscaloosa. This is from John Brown and Mike Wilhelm. They're spotters that teamed up on this day. And again, in this case, you had 30, 40 minutes of lead time to go to a safe place. From this one tornado, the death toll was 53 in Tuscaloosa. Most of those that got into trouble, not all, but many of them didn't hear the warning, and that's the one thing we have to fix. We're learning more and more that many people today don't hear tornado warnings. They don't understand the right way to get those, and we'll talk more about that in just a little bit. But my main job as a television meteorologist, it is to mitigate the loss of life during a day like that. Sure, it's nice to know what the weather's going to do on a sunny day or a cool day when the rain's going to start, but our job becomes pretty important on days like that. I want to go back and show some of the coverage briefly of that day. This was the first tornado of the afternoon. And let me say one thing about April 27, 2011. The death toll in my state that day from those 62 tornadoes was 252. That's inexcusable for anybody, for anybody in the weather enterprise, for anybody in the public. These were precious people that died on that day. When you learn who they were, and learn their life stories, and we all have work to do. But we had 2 rounds of severe storms on that day. We had a round in the morning, and then we had another round in the afternoon and that night. They were both pretty rough. This was the first tornado of the afternoon in Cullman County, Alabama. This is between Birmingham and Huntsville.
This could be a large tornado, but the truth is it doesn't matter if it's an EF0 or an EF1. That is life-threatening, but this is a tornado that looks very significant. Again, just because you don't see the darker clouds underneath that, it's down. You can see the debris swirling underneath this thing, and this is a tornado emergency for the city of Cullman. Beyond a tornado warning, because you're looking at it, and again, it's right here, and that is about to come right through downtown Cullman, watching the radar screen. And again, clearly in terms of travel, nobody should be driving along Interstate 65 or US 31 between the, let's say, the Dodge City exit and just the Morgan County line up around the Lacon exit. Okay, so nobody should be on Interstate 65. In fact, I would suggest this tornado is crossing the interstate right now, and goodness gracious, this is absolutely incredible. So again, this is a violent tornado that is approaching downtown Cullman. It should be close to Interstate 65 right now. And of course,
and again, if you'd like to watch more of the coverage of that day, it's all on YouTube. You can watch the morning coverage and then the afternoon coverage. Pretty riveting. And let me just say this, history will judge us for the work we did that day. We did some things wrong. We did some things right. But again, there's no book, there's no manual on how to handle 62 tornadoes in one day when you have multiple strong, violent tornadoes down at the same time. I think about that day often. In fact, at least once a day, my mind will drift back to that day. But the one thing I know for sure is the fact that we have to get better. So thank you for taking the time to watch this today. Now, I want to talk a little bit about getting ready for tornadoes and what you can do to help yourself. First off, every day, the Storm Prediction Center, this is an agency of the National Weather Service, they issue outlooks for severe weather. And I hope you know these categories. Every day, we have areas in the country with risks defined by these colors and these categories and numbers. The lowest severe weather threat is marginal, level 1, the darker green. That means there could be a few isolated severe storms. The highest level is level 5, which is a high risk. Those are rare. You might see one a year, maybe not even a single high risk in a year. Most tornadoes occur in slight and enhanced risk areas, level 2 and level 3. Level 4, level 5, that's pretty high end. But this is issued by the Storm Prediction Center multiple times a day, and it's good to know. You can access this information directly from their website or from your local meteorologist and have a pretty good idea of what might be happening on that day. But the other thing I'd like to talk about quickly today is the fact that what you have in your pocket, your phone, can be so powerful during times of severe weather. And I want you to learn the basics of radar, in case you don't know. Weather radar is the prime detection tool for tornadoes, and understand radar actually doesn't directly detect tornadoes. Radar detects a mesocyclone several thousand feet off the air where tornadoes are most likely occurring. But within that big ball, there's a parabolic dish that's constantly rotating on a motor, sending out beams of electromagnetic energy. And if these pulses encounter a target like a raindrop, part of the energy will bounce off the raindrop, immediately bounce back to the antenna. We make maps where the bounces are coming from, and the maps look like this. And we've learned that most people, when they see this, they just see a bucket of spill paint, a bunch of colors that doesn't mean much. But if you're on your own and you don't have a professional meteorologist to help, it's good to know what you're looking at. For example, this storm killed 23 people. That's a violent tornado. And I'd like to think that most of you watching this, you probably know it's right down there at the base of the hook. In the right rear flank of the storm, in the colors of yellow and orange, there's the shape of a hook. At the end of the hook, there's a spot of red and white. And there was no heavy rain there. Typically, when you see that, you've got heavy rain and hail. That was the radar beam bouncing off debris being lofted by the tornado, things like boards and bricks and glass and nails and tree limbs. So that's what the tornado looks like in a reflectivity display. And that's what most people see when they're looking at radar, is standard reflectivity. But radar can also detect wind because of the motion of the raindrops. This is the same tornado, but this is wind. In this particular frame, everything green, that's inbound targets coming toward the radar. Everything orange, that's outbound, and you can see that violent rotation. Here's another example. On the left, we have rain. On the right, we have wind. In the rain pattern, the reflectivity, you can see the hook and the debris ball, that little spot, the radar beam bouncing off debris being lofted by the tornado. And in the wind on the right, you can see that intense velocity couplet, green and blue, inbound, pink and tan, that's outbound. And now with dual polarization radar, we have a new product called correlation coefficient. Look in the lower right-hand panel. You can actually see the debris being lofted to confirm what you're seeing on the reflectivity and in the velocity. That's a tornado debris signature. Correlation coefficient, it looks at all of the returned energy coming back. And if there's something that comes back that doesn't correlate with the other echoes, if it's different, if it's not a hydrometeor, not a raindrop or an ice pellet, then it reflects a lower value. And that means we have debris. That's one of the most useful tools we have in tornado detection and confirmation these days is the tornado debris signature. So we want people to have the basic knowledge of how radar works. We don't want you to be a radar meteorologist. Understand, that's pretty complicated stuff, but knowing the basics can help you in case we're not here or someone is not around to tell you what you're looking at on your phone. So what do? You get a tornado warning, and to this day, a lot of people still have a little confusion about what to do and what not to do. And let me just say one thing about tornado warnings. Tornado warnings are not issued by counties. Counties are huge. Tornadoes are small. Even big tornadoes are small compared to an entire county. So we use geometric shapes called polygons. Yeah, if you're in the polygon, you respect the polygon. You do something immediately. And if you're not, don't worry about it. Sure, keep a close eye on the weather, but know if you're in or out of that polygon, and if you're in it, you've got to do something. And what you do will determine oftentimes if you can survive a tornado. The first thing you have to do is find a small room. A large room, no good. A gymnasium, a church auditorium like this. You have to find a small place, a hall, closet, bathroom, and it's survivable. This was an EF4 that hit this business, and they survived by being in that small interior hallway. Anywhere else, they would not have survived. This home hit by an EF4 tornado. The roof gone, walls gone. If you're in a big room like the kitchen, the den, a living room, a bedroom, odds are the shrapnel would severely injure you, or you might not even survive. In this case, this person survived by sitting in this interior hallway. And I took these photographs. In this house, every hall, closet, and bathroom was just fine. And we're in that safe place. And by the way, the safe place preferably is near the center of the house. We say this a lot, but it's a good thing to think about. Put as many walls between you and the tornado as you can. So small room near the center. Now, if you have an upstairs and a downstairs, you go down. You don't have to be underground. First floor, small room, lowest floor, near the center, and preferably away from windows. Objects can fly through those windows, and that broken glass can be extremely dangerous. And don't open windows. That's something from the 1960s. You don't need to do that. The researchers have shown that the windows will open themselves with debris flying through them before pressure difference can cause any damage. And this is an important point. In your safe place, everybody should be wearing one of these, a helmet. We have learned through the medical community that this is critical. Most people that die from tornadoes, they die from blunt force trauma wounds to the skull region. And if you put a simple bicycle helmet on, a motorcycle helmet, a batting helmet, if you have kids that play sports, that will greatly enhance your chance of surviving, and you will not have any serious injuries. And understand, this is not just for kids. This is for everybody. Old people, young people. It doesn't matter. A lot of people think, well, it's just for kids. No, every life is precious. So if you're 90 years old and if you're in a tornado warning polygon, you need to have a helmet on because that will greatly, greatly mitigate the loss of life. So that's what you do. And by the way, let me just say this. Obviously, mobile homes don't work. Manufactured housing. It is marvelous, affordable, safe housing. But you can't stay in a mobile home during a tornado. Like a car, you can't stay in a car. You just can't do that. There's no way. It's not safe. You've got to be in a site-built structure. So you plan it out now, not when a tornado's 3 blocks away and you're seeing the guy on television telling you to go to a safe place. You make your plans on a calm day, like today, and then you'll be ready when it happens. But one of our biggest problems, one of the biggest reasons that people are being injured or killed by tornadoes, it's not hearing the warning. And I believe one of the greatest problems, it is the siren mentality. the notion that you should hear some World War II vintage air raid siren before a tornado. You might hear them on a sunny day when they test those things, but what about 3 in the morning during a raging thunderstorm? If you are going to get your tornado warning information from an outdoor siren inside, you have no hope. They serve a purpose. They reach a limited number of people, not inside, but outside. Every home, I mean every home in a tornado-prone area has to have one of these, and I hope you do. This is called a weather radio. Is it older technology? Yeah, it's been around since the 70s, but by golly, it's good technology. And this doesn't have anything to do with a cell network. Cell networks can fail during tornadoes. We all know that. This is totally separate. These are large tower RF transmitters that go for a long, long way. And that will make a noise, a loud noise in your home that will wake you up. And weather radio penetration, it's amazingly low in some of the highest tornado-prone areas in the country. And again, we've learned that it's because people think they're going to hear a siren, and you won't. Please hear me when I say that. Do not, and I mean never, rely on an outdoor warning siren to let you know a tornado's coming. And a little bonus here, our friends at Midland Weather Radio have a special offer. We have a show called Weather Brains that's a podcast. We've been around since 2006. And right now, they have a 15% off code. If you go to their website, midlandusa.com, use the code SPANN15. That's my last name, 2 N's, 1 5. And you'll get a 15% discount. And you need one. So please, and if you have one, please tell your neighbors and your friends. Help us spread the word. This is very important. Very important. So the next question is, when do they happen? It depends on where you are. For the Great Plains, if you're in Kansas and Oklahoma, places like that, the peak really starts to come around in May and June. And as the summer progresses into July and August, the maximum area shifts north up toward the Canadian border. If you're in the deep south where I am down here in the southern United States, I really think we have one tornado season. For years and years, I said we have two. I would tell people we have a tornado season in late fall and early winter and another one in the spring. But I really believe that we have one season here, November through May. We have so many tornadoes in January and February, you just can't count those months out. So we're coming up on that time of the year. So again, the message today, and I hope you've heard this, when it comes to getting ready for tornadoes, number one, you have to have a way of getting the warning, and that's a weather radio in your home. And by the way, the secondary way is your phone. These are great. Every phone sold in America has wireless emergency alerts on them. There's no app. They're built in. And please don't turn those off. You get amber alerts, flash flood warnings, and tornado warnings. Some people don't like the amber alerts. Well, listen, if somebody's child is missing, don't you want to help? So please leave those on, and that's your secondary way of getting the warnings. Then have a plan. Know where you're going and know what you're going to do. Know your safe place. Have helmets for everybody. And also in the safe place, we want you to have hard-sole shoes. If you have to walk over a tornado debris field, you can really injure your feet. And finally, we like portable air horns. Sometimes you might be injured and you can't vocalize your need for help, but a portable air horn, you can squeeze that thing. You might not have the air coming through your lungs to blow a whistle, but you can squeeze that air horn and first responders can find you. So in that safe place, helmets for everybody, hard-sole shoes, portable air horns. Have a weather radio, and we'll be fine. Remember, tornadoes don't happen that often. They really don't, but you have to be ready just in case. And I promise in the weather enterprise, all of us that work in the private sector and television, those that work for the National Weather Service, those emergency managers that are part of the integrated warning team, we will all do our best to keep you totally informed next time we have severe weather. Thank you for watching today. Thanks for being part of the National Weather Association 2020 Weather